another Fault RC video. Today's video is going to be about the Mardave Meteor. You may have seen the preview video. If not, I'll try and put a link up here, or maybe up here, I'm not quite sure yet, I'm all new to this. So we're going to talk about this car. I got this car when I was 13 years old and it's been languishing in the garage for the past 35 years and I decided to get it out, and you may have seen that video where I put it back together again, got it running. Since then I've managed to crack a front wheel and pull one of the front axles, so I thought it was an ideal opportunity to take this car and do a few modifications to it. So in this video we're going to be talking about some of those modifications. So here you can see the DT03 steering knuckle along with the Hornet axle fitted. Now I've had to use one of the springs from the Hornet kit underneath that lifts the steering knuckle up a little bit so it doesn't foul on the wishbone. Using the original steering arms from the Hornet, they're a nice fit, threaded into the DT03 steering knuckle. Now that axle now is 5mm as opposed to the original 4mm from the Meteor. So that allows me to run now Tamiya wheels. However, they have to be in a 2.2 inch diameter wheel to prevent fouling on the steering knuckle. So there it is. You can't really see the pin, but just at the back here, just in the back of the axle, there's a little grub screw that holds the pin in position and stops it falling out. The spring just at the bottom holds the axle up so it doesn't foul on the wishbone at the front, and therefore you get enough steering angle. In terms of wheels, I've gone with the aftermarket JC Concepts 2.2 inch RC10 wheels. Now these are from Model Sport and they advise you get a bearing that is a 5 inner diameter, an 8 exterior diameter and 2.5mm width, and you need 4 of them, 2 per each wheel, 1 on the inside and 1 on the outside. Now when it fits to the car, you just got to be careful it doesn't bind against the steering knuckle, because you can see just there the axle protrudes slightly. So what you need to do is just use a few washers. I've used 3 washers at the back of the axle, and don't over tighten the nut, otherwise the wheel will bind. Now one of the upgrades that I've done to the steering front is the original Meteor. The steering servo was held in position with tape, and regardless of how well you cleaned it, at some point the servo would always move. So I've got this little aluminium servo bracket off Amazon. It wasn't very much money, and then I've just drilled the chassis and then fitted the servo to that, so the servo's now not going to move. Unfortunately, it does leave a couple of nuts hanging underneath the chassis, but I'm sure with a bit of thought I can obviously reduce that and maybe turn the nuts the other way around. So that's the front setup with the new servo mount just there, and obviously with the new steering knuckles, the new axles and the new wheels, and now 4mm nuts to hold the wheels in place. Moving back along the car, I've created a new plate above the battery. I had an old one that I made when I was 13. I freshened that up, put a new plate in there. I've created an extra sort of platform here for the electronic speed controller. Obviously you can get a bit of air underneath to help keep the electronic speed controller cool. What I really need to do there is create a mechanism where I can easily remove the battery, because otherwise I have to undo all the screws to get the battery out. So moving to the back of the car, I've made a new rear shock mount. So that's the original there, with the body mount and the wing mount on the back. So using a piece of 2mm glass reinforced plastic, I've measured up the original using a set of vernier calipers, and also using a piece of 3mm ARB plastic board, I've created a new rear shock mount. I drew it up in CAD, printed it out, stuck it to a piece of GRP, and then very carefully with a Dremel cut around it, sanded it, and then fitted it. The wing mount is a piece of ARB plastic, 3mm. You can see it there, that's stuck on with super glue. And I've used a electronics sort of standoff here for the body mount. At the moment that body is held on with a screw in the top, but at some point I will drill a hole through so I can use a pin to hold the body in place. And the wing is screwed in as per the original. So we'll just have a little look at that now. Now at some point, I know one of the problems with the Meteor originally was quite a lot of chassis flex because it is just a piece of aluminium. So at some point what I will do is I will create a metal bracket here to go between the gearbox and this battery plate. The servo mount at the front, because it's bolted to the chassis, does take a lot of that flex out in the front section of the chassis, just down here. So that is better now. At the rear of the car, we've also got the JC Concepts RC10 wheels. Now for the axles, I was reliably informed from one of the forums that the Meteor TG10 axle fits perfectly, and it does. So let's just have a little look at that. So that's the TG10 axle. The back of the RC10 wheel is a pin fitment. If you can see that with a light, there you are. That's a little bit better. Now, the one thing I did notice was that the original pin for the Meteor on the left is a lot shorter than the slot gap in the back of the RC10 wheel. So the one on the right, get my finger there, the one on the right here, that is actually from an FDX Vantage pin. It's a perfect fit in the back of the RC10 wheel. So I would recommend upgrading the pin to an FDX Vantage pin or a Carnage pin because it's the same. As you can see, the original Meteor one's quite short, and that will cause a lot of slop inside the wheel, potentially damage to the inside of the wheel. The only downside is that I wish the axle had a little bit more thread, because if you're not careful, as you tighten the wheel up, it then binds against the brass bushing here at the back. So you just have to get it onto the locking nylon locking element in the nut, and that just holds it in place. So at the front, I've made a new bumper out of glass reinforced plastic. I know you can get those from the Mardave site, and they are pretty cheap, but I thought I'd make one anyway. And also I've made a front shock brace to stop flexing between the front shock mounts like that. I'm not quite sure how much performance it's going to give me, but it certainly does reduce the flex quite a bit. Next on the upgrade list are some new shocks. I'm going to see if I can fit FDX Vantage shocks because they're pretty cheap, and see if they work. I might have to use some extra bushing on the front and back. Also, one modification here I might do at the back is use the two holes to create an extra element that comes up so I can put longer shocks on and therefore get more suspension travel and smoother. At the back of the car, one of the things that the Meteor suffered from was flex here between the motor mount and the gearbox. So I'm going to create a plate either to go down here and around the gearbox, or to go down onto the rear bumper, the rear motor protector at the back here. So that's going to come up soon. I'm going to leave it for a while now, this car. It's taken quite a bit of time. So let's put it back together and have a look.